You also mentioned Canada. So I think, especially here in Europe, for us, like Canada and the States, they seem pretty much the same. How do you look at the difference? And if there is a difference, what is the difference between these two nations? Can we even say that these are two nations, or?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
They're definitely two. Canada is definitely not the United States. From many different aspects. Of course, they have a very open immigration system. They want people to come to Canada because it's cold. And they're not flooded with they're not over flooded with people wanting to come there. So they're more open with their immigration policies, as far as I know, because I've been to all over Canada and taught all over Canada, and there are a lot of like Africans that are there. Which, why are you, I've met, folks from Nigeria, for instance. There's a church in Alberta, Canada, that's a Nigerian church in Alberta, Canada. So I went there and I said, well, why are you here? How did you get here? Well, we couldn't get into the United States.
Yeah.
Because of the immigration policies, but they came there, they were able to make a living, jobs. I've met people from all over the world in Canada driving taxi cabs.
Well, yeah. I also know that in Canada we have the third biggest diaspora of Ukrainians. So, of course, the second would be Russia, and the third would be Canada. So, and I know that there are a lot of Polish, Hungarians probably as well. So Canada is pretty much multicultural country. Talking about the migrants in the States, what would be the general attitude? Maybe we cannot say a general attitude towards migrants in the States, but how do you see it? How people see the migrants in the States? Is it negative or positive or neutral? Depends.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of negative reaction to the migrants, because most of the migrants in America, maybe not most, but a great percentage of them are illegal migrants. So they came without documentation, without papers, passed over the border without permission. And so I think that gives a lot of people a negative connotation of the migrants. The other thing is that they, as far as jobs, they take a lot of the work that maybe American citizens could do that. So that's from the negative perspective. From the positive, though, we have just for the people that we're associated with in Alabama, in the United States. They one of the men that's in our church, for example, he had to wear tires for shoes. He was just very poor, and so he came across to America, and now his children have been raised in America. One of his sons has now finished college as a teacher in Dallas. His daughter's beginning to go to nursing school. And so I can see for him it just afforded so much greater an opportunity that he would have had had he stayed in Mexico. So I can certainly understand the rationale of him immigrating with or without papers, just for his children's sake. The other lady I met actually in the state of Tennessee, she had her cell phone, and there was a picture of a young man on her cell phone. And I said, "Who is that?" And she said, "That's my son who was killed by the cartels in Mexico." So just for safety reasons, she left and brought her daughters up to America. So I can see there's some motivation, certainly understandable motivation for people immigrating with or without permission. Yeah.
I would say it's difficult to criticize even illegal Mexicans or just migrants. So you said that, for example, Mexicans take jobs that Americans could have taken. But as I observed when I was in the States, that maybe I'm wrong, but most of the jobs that they occupy would be like the lawn mowers or construction workers or something like that. Is that really something that Americans lack, like this kind of job? For example, they're taking jobs, but is it really something that Americans want?
Well, it would. I think probably that same job would be available to Americans as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they would work. But generally, the Hispanics and Mexicans that I know, especially the ones that have come over, all of them seem to be hard workers.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have any complaint with their work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think they just work wonderfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hard workers. Okay, talking about also different cultures. So you traveled all over the world, right? And of course you lived in the States for a long time. Can you please give me some obvious to you differences between Ukrainians, Russians, like Eastern Europe and the States? What would be like a drastic difference between these two nations, or two types?
Yeah. I think I'll make a difference between Ukrainians and Russians, if that would be okay.
Yeah, of course.
I think this is a generalization for me, but Russia is, they've been under the Tsar system of government for 1,000 years, basically. And so for me, a lot of the Russians still have a kind of a peasant mentality. That they just take things from the top, and whatever the leader says, that no matter how strong the leader is, that they'll just accept it and say, well, this is the way life is. And that, so they were based on and founded by peasants. America, on the other hand, was founded by pilgrims. And there's a big difference between a peasant and a pilgrim. You know, those that have left, but in the case of the pilgrims, the first pilgrims left Holland, left England, then went to Holland, and then came to America from Holland. But their idea for freedom and for self-determination, voting, that type of thing was way different from the general populace, I think, historically, of the Russian people. So I do sense, so it's interesting because I do sense a difference, and I make a difference between Russians and Ukrainians. A lot of the leadership we've seen in the Russian churches are actually Ukrainian people that have come up, and they seem to be more entrepreneurial, more go-getters than the Russian people do, and also
enthusiastic.
And also as we've been in Ukraine, there's just a greater freedom, a greater freedom in the air in Ukraine. You know that I think you can do more. There's more opportunity here, and so I do make a distinction between the Russian and the Ukrainian in that way, and then the Russian and the American in that way of kind of a nation of maybe a peasant mentality, whatever the top says is okay, we'll go along with it, versus America with more pilgrims, freedom, self-determination, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's something that it gives a thought, you know. What about you, Rick? Maybe you have...
Oh, I've only been to Russia one time, and this is the first time I've been to Ukraine, so I don't really know enough about the differences to, in the United States to really to know.
Anything that you could maybe immediately see that, okay, we don't do this in the States and they do it in Ukraine. Even these few days that you've been here, but maybe something, it can be anything, it can be mindset, it can be food, it can be attitudes.
One thing that I did notice that I don't know if David had noticed that, I mentioned it, that in the United States, a lot of people smoke cigarettes.
In the States?
Yeah. There's a lot of people that still, even though they smoke quite a bit. And I noticed that in Ukraine, there was a lot less smoking that I've observed.
Do you think so?
In the public, yes, in the public.
I thought it was the opposite.
I don't agree with that, but...
Yeah, well, that's what I noticed.
Okay.
And I asked David about it. He said he hadn't noticed that.
I felt completely different, because when I was in the States, I thought, okay, people smoke much less here, and that's good. Like the air is fresher, and I thought that in Ukraine, in Europe, it's much more common to smoke. Yeah. What do you say?
I think it's probably more in Eastern Europe than in America. That's my thought.
Because you have a bigger, richer experience here in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Mine's based on first impressions.
Yes, of course, but that's also interesting to compare, these different impressions. Okay, maybe the last thing that I will ask you, If, for example, Ukrainians, yes, those who are watching us right now, they are planning or dreaming to visit America, what would you say, maybe recommend when you come to America, you should know, or you should remember, or you should use this or that? Any suggestions that you may propose?
One thing I would suggest is if you're going to America, don't just think that New York City or Miami Beach or Los Angeles is America.
Pretty much stereotype that a lot of people have.
that in the United States it is so diverse. There's no way you can go one place and say that you've been to America because it is so diverse, and everywhere you go, people. While they're Americans, they love their freedom. They're different. All over the United States, they are different. And don't just think that, because I see a lot of people in my travels and with my work, and I've been in the United States. Oh, where have you been? Well, I went to New York City. I went to Miami Beach. I went to L.A. Okay, what did you? And did you go anywhere else? Oh no. Well, that's where I've been. Well, what do you know about America? Well, they know about New York City, which is wonderful, or it can be wonderful. I don't know how it is right now, but in times past it's been wonderful. So that's the one thing I would say. Don't judge America on just one thing. You really need to see America. You need to travel in America. You need to see the beauty. You need to see the natural. You need to meet the people.
To think out the box. Like, yes. America is not about New York, Miami, or Los Angeles. America is something more. Since America is, the states of America are bigger than Europe. And if Europe has many countries and many cultures in it, then America, even though it's one country, but still it can be, it is divided in a sense. Yes, okay. Thank you for having this conversation. I appreciate it. I have limited amount of time, and I want to let you go since I know that you are exhausted.
No, that's okay. Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for the coffee.
You're welcome.
Also, you can find me on Instagram, where you can see different posts, videos, guides, and also vocabulary that can be useful for you. Analysis of movies and TV series by me. So yes, you can find the link in the description.